Hello and welcome into Ray on Sports. This is your host, Johnny Ray. And on this podcast, we talk all things sports from our own opinion. You may agree or you may disagree, but all I do is ask that you listen. So come on in, buckle up, and let's take this ride. Hey, once again, welcome into Ray on Sports. I am your host, Johnny Ray, coming to you live. I am on location, if that makes sense. I'm on a location out here in Oakland, California. I'm out here for a church, which we call in the Church of God in Christ a workers meeting. So I'm out here for that to support one of my brothers who's going to get elevated tonight at this workers meeting. So I'm here in support of him. And while I'm here, I just go ahead and record a podcast. So today's podcast, we are talking about coordinators who does not make it as good head coaches, and also vice versa, the ones that do make it as good head coaches. And the reason why we came up with this topic and this subject is that there's a lot of coaching changes that's been happening in the NFL over this past couple of weeks. That we had the Black Monday where a lot of coaches got fired after the season was over, and they call it Black Monday because usually the last day after the irregular end of the regular season, there's always that Monday after that. There's this thing in NFL they call Black Monday, where teams decide if they want to keep their coaches or they want to move on because of the season they had or the record they had, or for one instance, even for them not making the playoffs. Team did make the playoffs and didn't make the championship game and thought they should have made the championship game, and so they decided to go a different way in their coaching circle. Now there's a couple of teams, not a lot of teams, but I'm saying there's some teams that made the changes after the season was over, and those teams were the Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens, Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens, Tennessee Titans, the Miami Dolphins, Atlanta Falcons, the Giants. Who else was it? It was like 10 teams that needed coaches. The Titans, the Giants, the Falcons, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Bills, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Arizona Cardinals. Those are I think if that's 10, that's 10. But out of all those teams, the Cardinals, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Steelers and the Falcons had all let go of their coaches at the end of the season, which is Black Monday. The other couple of teams, the Steelers and the Bills, happened to let their coaches go after their playoff loss. In the Steelers' case, Mike Tomlin decided to step down, after the playoff loss, saying that, he didn't have enough, he's good. It's about time for him to move on. He knew what that proverbial wall was like. And then there was the Bills' job, where nobody pretty much didn't see this coming, but the Bills let go of their coach, Sean McDermott, and they let him go because they have been making the playoffs every year, and in their thought process, because there's no Patrick Mahomes this year, there's no Joe Burrow this year, there's no Lamar Jackson in the playoffs this year, so they thought that should have been their quarterback easiest path to the Super Bowl, and it didn't happen. So they decided to move on from him. So they thought that since Josh Allen didn't have a Patrick Mahomes to go through, didn't have a Lamar Jackson to go through, didn't have a Joe Burrow to go through, that there should have been an easy path for him to get to the Super Bowl. And it didn't happen because they ended up losing in the divisional round to the New England Patriots. Bam. I'm sorry, not the New England Patriots. I believe it was the Denver Broncos. I believe they played the Denver. I got to look at the sheet again, but I believe it's the Denver Broncos that they played, and they lost. And so management felt like, okay, Sean McDermott then wore out his welcome. Not pretty much wore out his welcome, but they felt like Sean McDermott has done as much as he can do with what they had. So it's time to move on. So what they did was they moved on from him after the playoff loss. And the thing about it is a lot of these coaches were coordinators, either offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators, who got elevated. And besides Sean McDermott and Mike Tomlin, the rest of them were just elevated coordinators who didn't just couldn't get it done. So I don't know if it was. And some people say like, why did keep them so long? You know what happened? Some of it was their either a contract, maybe a contract that they had. Maybe they had like a 3 year, see what you can do contract. Someone might have had, experience and saying, well, just give me another year, just give me some players around me and I could probably turn this thing around. Case in point, Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland. He was two-time, as they always bring up, two-time coach of the year. So they figured, okay, just give him another year, he can get it. But then they finally decided to move on from him. But with that being said, and Kevin Stefanski is supposed to be a guru, offensive guru. So if he's an offensive guru, in my opinion, then he should be able to work with anybody. But that's a separate subject. That's something else to talk about. But I'm talking about coordinators who just don't get it done. So over the years, they've had some coordinators that just don't get it done as a head coaches. You had Josh McDaniels. He was a Patriots offensive coordinator during the Patriots Super Bowl champion run, and he was from that what they call the Bill Belichick tree. And he was supposed to make it, and they was like, "Oh, if he's an OC coordinator, that's just like one step from being a head coach." Went to the Broncos, was the head coach of the Broncos, had a 3-9 record in the second season of the Broncos. They fired him. I believe he went over to the Raiders, had a bad season there, and they fired him. So he went back to being a coordinator. And sometimes that's a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes you're a better coordinator than you are a head coach, and maybe that's just his niche to be a coordinator. Because I believe Josh McDaniels is now the coordinator for the New England Patriots again. I believe because he's coordinating. Yeah, he's the coordinator there because he's helping them. And the New England Patriots are the team that's going to the Super Bowl along with against the Seattle Seahawks. So Josh McDaniels found out that that's good for him. Maybe I'm not head coach material. Maybe I'm just a coordinator material. And the thing about it is a coordinator and a head coach. A lot of people say that the coach just coach is like the president of the team and the coordinator is like the person that handles the individual personnel. So Josh Daniel, maybe his individual personnel thing was just, I'm an offensive guy. I can handle offense as far as everything else, defense, special teams and stuff like that. That's just in my opinion. I'm not saying that's exactly what he said, but I'm thinking, in my opinion, that he could only do enough as an offensive coordinator. He didn't have the skills. I mean, he didn't have what it took to be a head coach. He couldn't control the offense, the defense, special teams, all those things that go along with it. Drafting, player evaluation, all that stuff like that. So that's what it was. I think, in my opinion, that could have been with him. And with a lot of coordinators, that's what it is. People think that, oh, you're a good coordinator, you work under this person, you should turn out to be a great head coach. And it's not the case all the time. Like I said, for one person was Josh McDaniels. There was a Marty Mortwing who went up to the coach. He was a highly successful offensive assistant and was hired by the Detroit Lions from 2001 to 2002. And his record was 5-27. Detroit was like, that's enough. We ain't had enough. Let's move on. Another person, Cam Cameron. He was he was an offensive coordinator for the San Diego Chargers. Went over in 2007 to the Miami Dolphins. Guess what their record was? 1-15. Miami's like, nah, we ain't doing that. Rod Marinelli. He was a defensive coordinator. Became the head coach of the Detroit Lions and went 0-16 his first season. Finished with a 10-38 record overall. Kevin Gilbride. Smart offensive coordinators, but started to be a head coach for the head coach Chargers, for the San Diego Chargers at the time. They're Los Angeles Chargers now, but they were the San Diego Chargers in 1997, 98. And he went with a record of 6-16, and they decided to move on from him. So it's a pattern. It doesn't work out too well. Romeo Crennel, respected defensive coordinator, one of the best defensive coordinators I think in the business, but he struggled as a head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. Dave Campo, same thing. Assistant, he was a long-time assistant with the Cowboys and turned out to be a head coach. And in 3 seasons, 5-11. So that's what it is. I mean, like I said, for me, some coaches just don't, as far as coordinators, you don't have it. You don't know how to what can I say? What's a nice way to say? You just don't have the moxie to be a head coach. And that's not just in sports. It happens in NFL. It happens in the NBA. They got assistants that have it in the NBA. Same thing. They're assistants and they become a head coach, and they really are not head coach material. People, give them praise and say, yeah, they could try as a head coach because they have the skill sets to do it, and they just don't. It doesn't work out. Now, some head coaches and some offensive coordinators who get a head coaching job have the right people around them, like the right talent around them. So them coming in, they just continue with doing what they're doing there, and they can say, well, you know what, I'll just let the players, be the players, and I'll just come in when I want to, to run some plays or whatever. Like especially like in basketball, and with the Boston Celtics, they had a head coach there, and then he left, for personal reasons, and then the assistant took over, and Boston's doing pretty well, and that worked. Like that's one of the success stories. But there's a lot of stories in the NBA as well of assistants taking over, and it didn't work out too well. Luke Walton for the Lakers was assistant for a long time, took over as a head coach, did not work out. And then here's the other thing: some franchises are these franchises that don't have time. Hear me clearly. To don't have the patience and the time for these kind of coaches to try to figure it out in 3 years. Because if you're at a winning standard, like I said, for example, I gave you the Los Angeles Lakers, another team, Kansas City Chiefs, San Francisco 49ers, Los Angeles Rams, New England Patriots, Pittsburgh Steelers, Denver Broncos, teams like that who are used to winning. Dallas Cowboys, they're used to winning. When you're used to winning and you bring a coach in, you want to continue that winning way. And when that coach cannot, and only some ownership will look at it like, I'm giving you everything you need. I'm giving you every person you need. I'm giving you every player you need, and you still can't get the job done. So maybe we need to move on to somebody else who can, grasp what it is and get an idea of how to run this ship. So let's just move on from you. So that was the bad coaches. And now all of them are not as bad. There was some best, there were, like I said, there was some good well, there's some more bad best assistants who were trying to be bad coaches. You had a Buddy Ryan. Buddy Ryan was known, he was he was a defensive coordinator. Buddy Ryan is known as the man who created the 46 defense, one of the greatest defensive minds in the history of football, but he never made it as a head coach. Ryan obviously had extreme success, and this is according to Bleacher Report. Ryan obviously had extreme success as a defensive coordinator, especially because he was the coordinator of the legendary 1985 Chicago Bears that won the Super Bowl. However, things just weren't the same as a head coach. He coached the Philadelphia Eagles from 1986 to 1990, the Arizona Cardinals from 1995 and 95, and it would end up with a 500 record for both teams combined, 55 and 55. Didn't work out too well. Eric Mangini, another person, I remember him, came from the Bill Belichick tree, the Super Bowl tree. Didn't make it as a head coach. He went on to the Jets and the Browns. Turned out to be a 33 and 47 combined record for both franchises. Didn't work out too well. Bill Callahan, same thing. Head coach of the Raiders. He was inherited it from John Gruden, and John Gruden had left the Raiders and went to Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Bill Callahan, see, like I said, these are coaches that inherited the team and should have kept going to winning with the team. But Callahan went 15 and 17. And then the next season, he went 4 and 12. And they was like, okay, yeah, that's enough. But he was a team's offensive coordinator from 1998 to 2001 and had success with, he had the likes of Tim Brown and Rich Gannon, but he couldn't find success. Like, this is the best quote right here. It's one of the best quotes on Bleacher Report. Says, but he could not find success as the main man. And that's something I just said earlier about as being the main person, it doesn't work out too well for them. They can do it as a coordinator, but as far as being the main person, no. I'm sorry. I'm also watching the Laker game right now. Lakers are playing the Wizards right now. And who's that? Rui Hachimura just shot a 3 and missed it. Right now the score is 77-48. Lakers 25 seconds left in the second quarter. And I'm doing it, and I'm so if you see me keep moving over or being distracted, that's what I'm doing. I'm watching the game. But they better not lose this game. They're up 77-48. They better not lose this game. So back to my coaching. Sorry, I got distracted. Back to that. Mike Tyson, another person. Best offensive mind in the NFL today. He's currently the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, but prior to he was the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. From 1997 to 2001, posted a record of 32 and 33. He was a decent head coach, but overall his time with the team was very mediocre at best. Dom Capers, I believe I mentioned him before. 48 and 80 record is bad. Dom Capers was the best, one of the best. Like I said, all these people are good defensive coordinators and defensive people. And currently, he was at the time of this story was written. He was the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, but he coached the Houston Rockets and the Carolina Panthers. And according to his article, he said he was pretty pathetic. Another person, Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell actually inherited this team with from Tony Dungy, I believe. When he took over the coach, he took it over from Tony Dungy, and he was the quarterback coach and assistant head coach. So you figured him and Peyton had a good understanding, and he could, they figured, okay, they have a good understanding, he can still do it. Ended up going 26 and 22 from 2009 to 2011, and that was it. Wow. But this writer had a personal thing about Jim Caldwell. He said another thing that I wanted to point out is that I could not stand his little near visible mustache and the way he always had his head on a tilted. It just bothered me. That's a personal opinion, but okay, I got you. We talked about Romeo Crennel, we talked about Cam Cameron, and we talked about Rod Marinelli and Kevin Gilbride and Morton Wig and Josh McDaniels. So that's what it is, So that's the thing about these like I said, these coordinators who think they're good as head coaches, and teams think believe it because they see what they do is with offensive, and they think they'll be good as coordinators. So that brings me down to the coaching carousel for 2025-2026 season, or 25-26 season. So right now, a couple of coordinators that got hired already. Todd Monken was the offensive coordinator for the I'm sorry, I got a brain freeze. I need some more coffee. Oh my God, come on, Johnny, bring it together, get it together, get back in the game. Okay, I'm back. Okay, Todd Monken, offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, had Lamar Jackson. The stories about Lamar Jackson's accolades. Hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, but has been multiple league MVPs. And then so he took over as the Cleveland Browns head coach, and Cleveland Browns fired Kevin Stefanski because he went 5-12. And like I said, and this was the same thing. Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year, but they went 5-12. And you can blame it on anything you want to, but I was like, whatever. So now he is the head coach over at Cleveland Browns. Now here's the caveat to that one. Here's a soap opera ready to happen. Jim Schwartz is their defensive coordinator. According to reports from the NFL, around the NFL, and from the Browns, I believe the Browns camp, is that Jim Schwartz was supposed to be the heir apparent. And he had an interview. He was assuming that he was going to take the role. They said he started, how okay, let's put it like this. You know how you have a job and you have a supervisor and you're like a lead, and your lead leaves, and you just assume that they're going to give it to you. So you start getting prepared for it, and you start doing things you need to do, and you start, changing the way you dress at work and start wearing suits and stuff like that to work that you never wore before, or wear clothes to work that you never wore before. And then you get to work, and the day you think he's going to get hired, they come in there and say, nah, we're not hiring you. We already hired somebody else. So Jim Schwartz felt some type of way. So he went around, according to reports, he went around the facility and told everybody, I'm out of here. Deuces. He wrapped up his cords. And he's out of here. Now, I don't know if he really left, but I haven't heard a report recently. But the last thing I heard was that he was ready to go. What you saying? What do you mean, Johnny, wrapped up your cords? You ever seen a musician on the stage, and when they get finished, they take the cords and they wrap them around their arm like they get ready to go? That's what he did. He packed his stuff, wrapped his cords up. Or, okay, here's another thing. Remember the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin? If you remember back that far, if you're old as me. And Steve Martin was leaving. He said, all I need is my toothbrush and his toilet thing and something else, and that's all I need. And that reminds me of what Jim Schwartz is doing. All I need is my playbook and my jacket and my Browns hat, and that's all I need. Oh my God, I'm not laughing at nobody's pain, but that's funny. That's funny. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google The Jerk with Steve Martin and find that episode, find that scene, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That is some funny stuff. He was they had kicked him out. I believe he was like, I can't think of I can't remember the premise of the movie, but Steve Martin was like, they was kicking him out, and he was like, "It's all I need is this and this and this, and that's all I need." And he was walking down the street with all this stuff in his hand. Hilarious stuff. So anyway, back to Jim Schwartz. So that's the like I said, the thing right now is that he's leaving. The and that segues into the San Francisco 49ers because San Francisco 49er defensive coordinator Robert Saleh just got a job with the Tennessee Titans. I think he'll do well. He's a coordinator that will, I believe, he'll do well because, and you can't judge him off of his time with the Jets. The reason why is because when he was with the Jets, he did what he was supposed to do. He did bring him where he was supposed to. As far as defensive wise, they were the best defense in the league, and Saleh can coach defense, and Saleh can coach. He just didn't have the proper personnel on offense that he needed to get the job done. And management wasn't listening to him; they were listening to their quarterback, Aaron, who said Saleh wasn't really the person they needed. And I take it as this is my own personal opinion because it's my podcast, Ray on Sports, and I'm Johnny Ray, and I can say what I want to say on my podcast. I think it was two Eagles there. It was two male alpha males, put it like that. It was two alpha males. You had Saleh and you had Rodgers, and they were alpha males. Both of them were alpha males. And it took either Saleh probably said, "Hey, I'll do it, if you don't get Aaron." And Aaron said, "I'll stay if you get rid of Saleh." So management listened to Aaron and said, "Okay, sure, yeah." They got rid of Saleh, and they brought in, I think, a coordinator to take over with Rodgers, and that still didn't work. But it proved that Robert Saleh can coach because that's why he got so many offers once he came back. He didn't get an offer that first year because that's why the 49ers offered him his job back as defensive coordinator, and he came back and he did a pretty dang on good job with all the personnel that they had lost on defense. You're starting defensive lineman, your number one draft pick, your star linebacker, your star corner, your star safety. Lost all those people, and they still made it to the divisional round with that defense. It wasn't the best, but he worked with what he got and got the best out of what he got. So I think Tennessee's Titans saw that and said, yeah, he might be okay. So that was one of them. That was one segue into that. So that takes us there to Tennessee Titans. The other person that got hired was Joe Brady. And Joe Brady has been the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills for the past since 2022. And before that, he was in 2019. He was with LSU. He was a passing game coordinator, and they won the championship that year he was there. So for them, Buffalo said it makes sense to hire from within, and they take Joe Brady, and they elevate him as quarterback. Now, there's a lot of things about that people are talking about Buffalo Bills. Why would you elevate Joe Brady? Why wouldn't you go out and get somebody else? Why wouldn't you get that younger, because, maybe, I don't know if it was this team or another team that was saying that we need to get something younger in here, but they go get Joe Brady. But maybe Josh Allen, they might have discussed it with Josh Allen because, on some teams, you have the alpha male at quarterback. The management will have his ear, and he's like, they probably say, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, let's go with Joe. Joe's pretty good at it. Joe's been here a while, and Joe knows everything." So the next thing for Joe Brady to do is to figure out if he's going to keep McDermott's staff, or then will he just get his own staff and start all over? And because then Buffalo was right there. Like I said, Buffalo was right there this year. They didn't have a Mahomes in the way. They didn't have a Jackson in the way. They didn't have a Burrow in the way, and they still couldn't make it. So they're trying this new blood, this new look with Joe Brady and see if they can get right back to where they were. We'll see. But it's a lot of pressure on Joe Brady to get it done. Another team, Pittsburgh Steelers. So in Pittsburgh Steelers' case, Mike Tomlin just stepped down. Pittsburgh Steelers is one of those storied franchises who don't really have quarterback turnovers. So compared to a team like the Cleveland Browns, who had 19 coaches over the past 20-some years, maybe 30-some years, the Pittsburgh Steelers since 1969 have only had 3 head coaches: Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. and they all started at in their 30s, and they stayed with the organization for forever until they decided to step away. Like I think Bill Cowher decided to step down and said, you know, I'm good. I'm done with coaching. Bill Cowher came in, same thing. I'm sorry, and Mike Tomlin came in and had the same thing. So now they turned to Mike McCarthy, who won a Super Bowl with the Packers, went to Dallas, didn't do too well with the Cowboys, and I think same thing with Dallas. Mike McCarthy is an alpha male as well, and I believe the issue with, in my opinion, the issue with him in Dallas was that you had Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones ain't really gonna let you say what you want to say. That's why you lost. That's why he lost Jimmy Johnson, and Mike McCarthy reminds me of a Jimmy Johnson. Mike McCarthy reminds me of a person that says this is the way we're gonna do it, and it's my way or the highway kind of thing. And Jerry Jones was like, nope, I ain't doing that. So he knows what he's doing. So I believe that's why Pittsburgh has his reputation of getting people that they want in there, who gonna have control, who can control the team, and then the Steelers are not gonna stand in the way and tell the coach what to do. They're gonna give him full flexibility to do what he wants, get the players he want, how he want them. Same thing Mike Tomlin had when he got it. He had that flexibility to get who he wanted and how he wanted them to get him work, and it worked for Tomlin. Tomlin got a Super Bowl out of it. So we'll see. McCarthy has 18 years of coaching, and he also played. He also had and when he put up the Packers, his quarterback was Aaron Rodgers, who's now the head quarterback for the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But they also need to bring in another quarterback because Aaron ain't getting no younger, and Aaron took some hits this year. Well, will he make it through another year? It's hard to say. Aaron came back, had a decent year. They made it to the playoffs, but I think the writing was only on the wall about Mike Tomlin. Was like, if I don't make it past this round, I think I'm gonna be done. Or whatever round we make it to, I think I'm gonna step down after that. I think that was writing on the wall for him. I think he just wanted to take a break and step away. Knowing him, he might take a year off and come back. Might take a year off going to TV and start doing that, and then come back. A lot of coaches have done that. They took a year off, went to TV, and then came back and became coaches again. I don't have that list in front of me, but I know there's some who did that. I know there's what's the name did that, but he's a GM now. I'm sorry, he's not a coach. But the GM, he did that. He was in broadcasting, and then went over and became a GM of the San Francisco 49ers. That's God, I can't think of his name. Oh my God, that's my team. I can't think of his name. His name slips my mind right now, but we'll get back to that. Baltimore Ravens, they hired Jesse Minter. Now for this, here's this interesting thing: is Jesse Minter used to coach with Baltimore Ravens. He was a defensive coordinator on the Ravens staff. No, I'm sorry. He was with Georgia State as a defensive coordinator, and John Harbaugh, who had just got fired by the Ravens, hired him on as a defensive assistant. He stayed there he was in there in 2017, and then from there he left there and went to Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, which is John's brother. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird how he played for both brothers? I don't know if they called each other and said, hey, can I use him? And he's like, yeah, go ahead and take him. So he went to Michigan and played there and then coached there as a defensive coordinator for 2 years. And then went with Harbaugh to the Chargers, LA Chargers, and coached there. And with him being in charge, the defensive unit was in the top 10 in fewest points allowed and fewest yards given. LA's defense was number 1 in points allowed, making Minter one of the hottest names in the hiring cycle. And it says, much like John Harbaugh, when the owner, Steve Bisciotti, hired him, Minter had never been a head coach at any level. But his familiarity with the Ravens, with Bisciotti and Ozzie Newsome as general manager, Eric DeCosta, should smooth over some of the normal growing pains for the first-time head coaches. So he has familiarity with the whole organization, so it should be easy for him to fit in. So they don't really need – well, he got to find him a offensive coordinator as well, because the person that they wanted him, I think he had his eye on, was Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator who just got hired at the Bills. So I think that's one of the people he had in his eye on once his coordinator left, who was Todd Monken, who went to the Browns. Once he left, then I think Jesse Minter had his eye on Joe Brady or even Cliff Kingsbury to be his offensive coordinator. So he might go up to Cliff Kingsbury, and they might have go up to Cliff Kingsbury because he's looking for a job right now. He was the He was offensive coordinator for he was the head coach for the Cardinals. Didn't work out too well. Went to the Washington Commanders as their coordinator and did pretty good with Jaden Daniels. So that's him. And we talked about Robert Saleh. And like I said, for the 49ers, as defense coordinator, he navigated the season with two of his best players, Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, out, and still got him to the divisional round. So he might, he can inherit, he can do something good with that. He got Titans have a full salary, have a good salary cap, have a high draft pick. They have a number one pick in quarterback at Cam Ward, and he has a new offensive coordinator Brian Daboll, who was fired by the New York Giants. So see how this coaching carousel works. You get fired, like I said, you're not good as a head coach, so you get fired, and somebody else hires you as your skill that you get started with, your core offensive skills or your defensive skills. So you go back to your roots. And so he got Brian Daboll as a defensive coordinator, because even when you're a head coach, when you're a head coach and you're not doing as well, they look at, well, he was a good offensive person, or he was a good defensive. I was a defense while he was the head coach. And then also defense was like in the top 10. So it's like, yeah, he still knows how to coach his defense. He just not good as the main person. And I think that the guy in this other article in Bleacher Report has said, not good as a main guy, but he can coach some defense. So he did that. So I think that's what they're going to do. Miami Dolphins. After the Mike McDaniel thing that they fired him, they went out and got Jeff Haley, a defensive coordinator. Mike McDaniel is an offensive coordinator, and I believe he's got a job. I think he's getting a job. I think he's getting interviewed by, I can't think of the name of the team, but I think they're looking at him. Oh, the Giants, because John Harbaugh took over the Giants, and I think he's looking at Mike McDaniel as his offensive coordinator, because John Harbaugh is the same person. He's like a defensive-minded coach, and he's looking for offensive coordinator, and I think he's looking Mike McDaniel's way, so that he might move over to the Giants. But Jeff Haley, defensive coordinator. Where has he been from? I don't even know. This hire gives Dolphins more defensive acumen. They need a coach who could instill some toughness and grit in the team. So they're saying the defense was horrible, and he was a defense coordinator in Green Bay, and they were in the top 5 in 2024. And he could have did the same thing the next season with Green Bay, but they said Micah Parsons got hurt, so he knows what he can do. So they have a plan. I think Miami has a plan that says we just need a guy. But we know we can have on offense. We know we have on defense, and he probably can bring all this out on somebody with the right coordinator. So we'll see that. We'll see how that works. Atlanta Falcons hired Kevin Stefanski. Same thing. Coordinator, coach of the year with the Browns. Now he's going to go over to the Atlanta Falcons. A lot of I read online, and this is just from me reading, that a lot of Atlanta Falcon fans did not like this hire. They didn't think Kevin Stefanski was the right person for this job. They didn't think Raheem Morris should have got fired in the first place, because Raheem Morris actually did pretty well, even though they had a losing season. They went 8-9. They actually won the last 3 games of the season, and they beat some pretty good teams. They beat the Rams, I believe, was one of the good teams that they beat. But we'll see. He has Michael Penix Jr. He has Bijan Robinson, one of the top running backs in the league. He is the top runner, in my opinion. I've seen him play. I've seen him play against the Niners, and that dude is a beast. He has all the skills. He has all the talent. He has everything you need. And Michael Penix Jr., if he didn't get hurt, I believe he could have been a great QB in the league. So let's see who Kevin Stefanski is. So this will prove if it was just Kevin Stefanski's coaching, or is it the person, the player, or the organization. They can. You can point your fingers different ways. You can say it was the Browns organization. They're just a mess, and that's why Kevin Stefanski couldn't succeed as head coach. Or you can blame the coach. One of the two. We'll see. This hire right here, this hire right here, and I don't have anything against Kevin Stefanski, but it's like a lot of people look at it like you had Shedeur Sanders, who was a rookie, who was electrifying, and you couldn't get it done with him. And you kept pushing him back. And kept going, and you had Dylan Gabriel, who was a stud in college. You had those two studs, stud in college, and then Shedeur Sanders, who was a stud at Colorado State. You had those two top QBs, and you couldn't get it done. So we'll see. And like I said, this is the one that's most interesting to me, because I'll see what he can do his first year in Atlanta. But also, Atlanta has a new president of football, which is Matt Ryan, who used to be their quarterback. So he's there too. And they also going to get a first. They're going to get a new general manager because they believe they released their general manager as well. So we'll see what it. We'll see what we'll see what happens. But the Falcons were 8-9, just same as the division winner Carolina Panthers. So they wasn't that far off. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And like I said, they finished up on a 3-way game winning streak. It was actually a 4-game winning streak that they ended up with. So we'll see how that goes. They still have Kirk Cousins in the building. They're paying him all that money, and we'll see if they release him or. I think he's expected to be released. So we'll see. We'll see what how Michael Penix comes back, and Bijan Robinson shouldn't miss a step because he's that dog, and they got some quality receivers over there. So we'll see how it goes. I talked about the Giants. They hired John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh, he could be the best. He could be good for the Giants. Giants got a notable. See, what the thing about it with this hire with John Harbaugh is that it's New York Giants. You got to bring in a top name because you're in New York. Just like if you've been in LA, or like you being in Pittsburgh, or you being in New England, or any LA team, any California team, any New York team, East Coast teams. Those top teams, you got to bring in somebody who people going to gravitate towards and says, okay, yeah, I think he can get the job done. You can't just bring in anybody. So them hiring John Harbaugh, I think that was a smart move because they need somebody to right that ship, and he has the coaching resume to do it. He was expected to bring over Tom Monken, but then now Tom Monken got hired with the Cleveland Browns, so he's got to look for another offensive coordinator. And I think that's why I said I think he's going to look at Mike McDaniels as his offensive coordinator. But he did coach Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson had a lot of praise for him. So maybe he can coach Jackson Dart because Jackson Dart kind of reminds him of Lamar, his toughness. How he, he's a tough QB. He wants to make every play and stuff like that. So John can get in his ear and says, "Hey man, you don't have to make every play. You got weapons." And the only thing about them was that what slowed down the Giants from winning last year was they lost their top receiver went out with an injury, as well as their running back went out with an injury, their rookie running back. Those two guys went down, and that just like killed their season. But if he can right the ship and stay healthy, I believe they got a chance. I believe that's an intriguing hire for me as well. But I believe John Harbaugh can do it. Let me see. I'm trying to see their roster real quick. I'm sorry for who they lost on their wide receivers, for their wide receiver front. They lost their run. I know their running back went down. I'm trying to remember his name. I'm sorry. Just give me a minute. Oh God, what's the guy's name? Scatterboo. Cam Scatterboo. That was the guy's name. He was the one. He was the guy they had. I don't think he was a running back though. I don't think they had him as a running back, but I don't know who he was. But he was there, and then their wide receiver that they had, that was the outstanding wide receiver. What's the guy's name? Oh my God, is he on here? Wide receiver, Malik Neighbors. There it is, Malik Neighbors. So he had Cam Scatterboo and Malik Neighbors. That's the guys that went out last year. If you can get those guys back and get them where they need to be, I think Giants will be pretty good this year. So I believe that. I believe that he can do it. Now, when I talk about coordinators, and let's get back to the coordinators that were pretty good but not as good. So not all coordinators were bad coordinators. There were some that were great coordinators and turned out to be great head coaches. Top of that list, Bill Belichick was a defensive coordinator for the Giants in the 1980s, helped them go to the Super Bowl and became arguably the most successful head coach in history with 8 Super Bowl rings. Now, there is some noise about him not making the Hall of Fame on his first time Hall of Fame ballot. I think that's wrong. I think he should be in there. Whether I like the New England Patriots or not, you can't deny his track record. You can't deny the Super Bowls. You can't deny none of that. And for him not to make the Hall of Fame, that's unjust all the way around. And I think the Hall of Fame committee, I think you guys need to redo it, re-listen, talk to yourself and think about it. And if there was some kind of collusion inside of that, voters who didn't want him in there for some reason or another, for whatever scandals they talk about, the Deflategate or whatever it was, that has nothing to do with his record, his track record. He still won. You can talk about all the other stuff he did, all the other things that happened. You can talk about all that stuff. But in my opinion, oh, Lakers. I'm sorry. I was looking at the Lakers again. Lakers still win 90-57 in the third quarter, 8-11 left in the game. In my opinion, he still should be number one in the Hall of Fame because he has that Hall of Fame career. So that's another subject for another day. I'll probably do another podcast on that before I, you know, record another one before that. But I'll do one after. I'll probably do one after. Maybe sometime next week. I'll put out another podcast and we'll talk about that some more. But okay, so from him, also you had Andy Reid, quarterbacks coach and assistant head coach under Mike Hogan in Green Bay. Andy Reid went on to success in Philly, and now he's over success in Kansas City. Outstanding, outstanding. He had the tools, and Andy Reid had started with who do you have when he came to when he had to Kansas City? He didn't have Patrick Mahomes right away because Patrick Mahomes that was a rookie when he got there. I think they had drafted Patrick Mahomes. He had God, what is that quarterback's name? He had oh my God, I can see him. He's the quarterback for the LA Rams, and he got traded. God, I can't think of his name. Anyway, but I can see his face in my mind, but I can't think of his name right now. But that's okay. But yeah, he had him, and for him, Andy Reid taking Patrick Mahomes and making him the quarterback that he is today, and taking that whole team and making that team the dynasty that they can be, outstanding. So, like I said, he was one of the ones who could do it. Sean McVay, another person, was a Redskins offensive coordinator, and now he's the head coach of the Rams, and has a Super Bowl ring to show for it. Sean McVay, he's outstanding. He's a coach. You can just talk. If you look at his interviews, you look at him. That dude's a coach. He's a coach. He can go down. I think he won't. I think for the Rams, I don't think Sean McVay would ever get fired. I think what they would do was allow him to retire as a coach. That's the kind of pull he has, and that's the kind of success rate he has with the Rams. Even though they didn't make it this year to the Super Bowl, I think the Rams are not looking at like we need to get rid of Sean McVay and get him stuff because he had the weapons around him. He had Puka Nacua. They had I think probably this league's MVP and Matthew Stafford. They had who came over there from the Raiders. Oh my God, see these names are flying on my head, but they had him and the other wide receiver. And he had some weapons. He had some good weapons there, and they just didn't make it. They ran into a buzzsaw of the Seattle Seahawks defense, and defenses held them down. But you can't deny him. He's an outstanding coach. Tony Dungy, same thing. Defensive coordinator for Tampa. He made the Tampa 2 defense. That was named. It was named after him. And turned out to be a head coach with the Indianapolis Colts. He was a coach at Tampa Bay, and then he left and then went to Indy and won the Super Bowl. So there you go. Another person. Bill Cowher, same like I was talking about Bill Cowher, same thing. Defensive coordinator, special teams coach. Went to Pittsburgh Steelers, became an outstanding head coach, and was exactly what Pittsburgh needed. He was that kind of coach that Pittsburgh was looking for. Kyle Shanahan, same thing. Offensive coordinator. He was offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons that went to the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. The one that that same Atlanta Falcon team that had the game, that was winning, that was running it, and then New England came back in the second half and beat them. That Kyle Shanahan, and he comes from a family of good coaches. His dad, Mike Shanahan, was a head coach of the Denver Broncos, who won a Super Bowl with John Elway. So Kyle Shanahan is still doing it. And the thing about him, I think he should get Coach of the Year, but who knows, because of what he did, what he got, and just like Robert Saleh had to do what he had to do with the defense, with all the injuries. Same thing Shanahan had to do with the offense, with all the injuries. With injuries at quarterback, injury at running back, injury at wide receiver. And Kyle Shanahan still devised a plan to get those guys going. So Kyle Shanahan, outstanding. Wade Phillips. He was pretty good, I guess. Wade Phillips. His dad was Bum Phillips. I don't know if you remember him. He was the Houston Oilers coach way back in the day. But Wade Phillips, success as a coach. He was defensive coordinator and had some couple of stints in the NFL, and I guess he was pretty good. Bruce Arians, same thing, was an offensive coordinator, turned out to be a Super Bowl head coach, and he was a Super Bowl coach for where is he at? Bruce Arians. I gotta look at up anyway. Also, Dan Quinn went defensive coordinator in Seattle and turned out to be a head coach in Atlanta and did pretty good. and now he's back as the defensive coordinator. He's currently a defensive coordinator. But Bruce Arians, where did he win a Super Bowl at? I know that name. I know that, but I'm trying to figure out where did he win a Super Bowl with. But I remember he did win a Super Bowl. Oh God, where is he doing now? He's with the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, interim head coach of Indianapolis Colts. He was the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. He was the offensive assistant for Pittsburgh Steelers and helped them win the Super Bowl. He got hired in the NFL. Oh, Arizona. He got him to the NFC Championship game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's where he was at. He led the team the first postseason and climbed over the victory. He was the oldest head coach to win the Super Bowl. So he went to Tampa Bay and won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. That's what it was. Okay. So that's what it is with Bruce Arians. But I was like, I'm trying to wonder where'd he go? You know what? Dan Quinn, same thing. I think he he was a coach of the Washington Commanders. Is he still a coach? Yeah, he's still on the hot seat, but I guess he was doing pretty good. Dan Quinn, he did good with what he had. He was he was the head coach of the Super Bowl, the team in Atlanta that went to the Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan as their offensive coordinator. So Dan Quinn was the head coach then. So yeah, he made it, and then he got a job at the Washington Commanders and been doing pretty good with Jay Daniels. So it works. Like I said, there are times when when it works. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. For those guys I just named, it worked. For the Belichicks, the Reeds, the McVays, the Dungies, the Cowards, the Shanahans, the Phillips, the Arians, and the Quinns, it worked. For the other coaches that didn't make it, they were good assistants but didn't make it. The McDaniels, the Morton Wiggs, the Gilbrights, the Martinellis, the Camerons, the Cornells, the Caldwells, the Capers, Tice, and the Callahans didn't work out too well. But that's what I wanted to talk about. I actually stayed on subject this time, besides the Laker game going on. But you got the lesson is, sometimes you're good as the coordinator or the behind the scenes person, and sometimes you're good as the head person. Me, and it's for any walk of life. And here's my tip of the day. Here's my thought of the day. Here's my caveat for you for the day. Sometimes God will put you in a position that you need to be in, and you trying to get in a position where you think you need to be in. Okay, so let me put it another way. God will put you in a position that he needs you to be in, but you want to get in a position that you think you need to be in. Does that make sense? Make sense to you? You want to be in a position that you want to be in, but God puts you in a position that he wants you to be in. And you tried your best to get out that position and said, I want to do this. I think I should do this. And end up going back to where God told you to be at. I think there was a message preached on that one time. I believe it was by me. Yeah, move when God tell you to move. There it is right there. Move when God tell you to move. And some people move without God telling them to move. And I got that message from, and this is my message. You can take it, you can listen to the rest of this, or you can turn the podcast off, whatever you want to do. But the message was that the scripture that I had got was from Deuteronomy, when the children of Israel got out of Egypt. And as they were walking through the wilderness, going to the promised land, God had a cloud over them. And that cloud would be a cloud day and a night. So they were I can quote it verbatim, but the scripture did say that when the cloud moved, they moved. If the cloud didn't move, they didn't move. If the cloud stayed for 3 years, they stayed for 3 years. The cloud moved one day, they moved one day. Without question and stuff like that. So what am I saying is sometimes you move without God telling you to move. And when we're talking about today, we're just talking about on this podcast about coordinators and coaches. Sometimes you move into your destiny when God tells you to move to destiny, and sometimes you just move into destiny when you think you should be in a destiny, and come to find out you had to go back to where God had started you at and wait a little bit longer, or maybe that's your destiny, is to be where you are. So don't fight it, do it, and be the best at it. For whatever you do, be the best at what you do. If you got to be the best sweeper in the building, be the best sweeper in the building. If you're on your job and you're the analyst, Be the best analyst you can be. If you're the clerk, be the best clerk you can be. If you're the person that hand out fries, be the best person to hand out fries. If you're the best person be the barista, be the best barista you can be, because that's your destiny. That's what God has for you, and you never know what the blessing will come from that. From you being that best person of what you're doing, especially dealing with the public, you be the best you can be at your job, and look where God will take you. Okay, so that's my my little end of the podcast inspirational message. Be the best you can be and move when God tells you to move. So once again, this is Johnny Ray for Ray on Sports. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening. You can re-listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, Ray on Sports, on Buzzsprout, on Apple. Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, and all the other platforms that this podcast is. And even, you know what? You can even tell your smart speaker, tune in to say, tell your smart speaker, hey Alexa, play Ray on Sports, and it'll come up. So I'm only been on Amazon. So that's it for this week. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, hit me up at rayonsports0905@gmail.com. That's rayonsports0905@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Johnny Ray for Ray on Sports. Thank you for taking this ride, and God bless. Ray on Sports is sponsored by nobody.